All right, welcome. Today, we're unpacking a really high stakes geopolitical balancing act. We're talking about India, caught in this incredible tightrope walk between two global giants, the United States and China. So, how exactly does a rising power play this game?
And that brings us to the core question, right? USA or China? Who should India actually trust? Now, on the surface, you might think it's a simple choice, a fellow democracy versus a strategic rival. But as you'll see, the reality is way, way more complicated than that.
And this slide really shows you the pickle India is in. On one hand, you've got some positive signs with China. Flights are starting up again, trade is actually on the rise, and the leaders are talking. But then you flip it over, and you see the United States sounding this massive alarm bell, basically saying, hey, don't be fooled. This peace you're seeing, it's deceptive. So, let's dig into that warning first. Let's look at the case against trusting China, and this is coming straight from a U.S. Pentagon report, which lays out some pretty serious and, frankly, pretty dire predictions. And get this, look at the language here. The report doesn't just say China has a claim or an interest. It says China is obsessed. That's an incredibly strong word for a military document. It suggests this isn't just some casual border dispute. It's a deep, driving ambition for Beijing. And the report doesn't stop there. It lays out what it claims is China's multi-pronged strategy. First, surround India with military bases. Second, actively work to box in its influence in the region. And third, try to break up its partnership with the US. And here's the kicker. It says all the current talk and diplomacy, it's just a tactic, a long-term deception. So this isn't about a quick win. According to the Pentagon, we're talking about a grand, decades-long plan. The idea is to keep things quiet for now, wait for the right moment to act, and then by 2049, which is the 100th anniversary of the People's Republic, achieve this national rejuvenation by taking back all the territory they believe is theirs. Okay, so that's a pretty scary picture painted by the Pentagon, right? But, and this is a big but, before we just accept that warning at face value, we have to flip the coin and ask, is the U.S. really a reliable partner here? Do its actions actually match its words?
So let's go back to one of the main accusations in that report, that China is hell-bent on driving a wedge between India and the United States. The Pentagon presents this as a core part of China's strategy to isolate India. But here's the thing. A lot of experts, including many Americans, would argue that recent U.S. policy has already done a pretty good job of damaging that relationship all by itself. Things like major trade disputes and political tensions have seriously strained the trust between the two countries. And that brings us to what might be the biggest contradiction of all, and it's something that's just impossible to ignore when you're talking about trust. And that's the issue of who is arming Pakistan. I mean, just look at this. It's kind of wild. While the United States is warning India about the threat from China, both of them are selling top-tier military hardware to India's #1 rival. China is sending advanced fighter jets, and the U.S. is pumping hundreds of millions of dollars into upgrading Pakistan's F-16 fleet. It just doesn't add up. So, with all these contradictions, what is really going on? What's the actual endgame here? If we look beyond the warnings and the finger-pointing, what do the US and China truly want? Well, the core of this whole thing might have nothing to do with friendship or alliances at all. It might just come down to the basic math of global power, an idea you can boil down to this simple concept: G2 versus G3. So what on earth does that mean? Well, think of it like this. The world currently has two undisputed heavyweights, the US and China. That's the G2. And the theory is they're both actually pretty comfortable with that. What neither of them wants is a third heavyweight, like India, stepping into the ring and turning it into a G3, because that means they'd both have to share power. So if you're India and you're looking at this whole situation, you can't completely trust the warnings from one side and you can't completely trust the intentions of the other. So what do? What's the most logical path forward? And that leads us to the ultimate takeaway from all of this. In a world of competing giants, you can't bet your security on anyone else. Both the US and China are going to do what's best for them. So the only real path to security is to build it yourself, from the inside out. And his quote just nails it, doesn't it? It perfectly captures the heart of the matter. If you're powerful, no one's going to mess with you. But if you're internally weak, you become a target. It's that simple. Strength is its own best defense. And why does this matter? Because real power, real influence on the world stage, isn't just talk. It's built on a solid foundation. You need a fast-growing GDP, a strong domestic economy, enough money to fund your defense, and crucially, the ability to create your own technology. That's the whole shebang. And really, that's the question we're left with. It's not just a puzzle for India. It's for any nation trying to make its mark today. In a world dominated by giants, how do you actually carve out your own path, forge your own destiny, especially when those giants might prefer you just stay in their shadow? Something to think about.